And welcome to The Forge. Today we have a guest player on. You can speak now. Say hi.
Hi, I'm Daniel.
Okay. Alright. Hi, Daniel. Alright, so today we are having Nurgle Deamons versus Sisters of Battle. So like the video if you like the video, comment if you want to comment, share if you want to share it, and more to come. And so for today, I'm bringing my own personal army that I have in real life. 2,000 points of Nurgle Deamons. I have Rodigus, a Great Unclean One with Bell and Bioblade, and the melee Great Unclean One with Big Sword and Plague Flail. And I have 2 units of Plague Drones, 2 units of Plague Bearers, 2 units of Nurgling Swarms, 2 units of Beasts of Nurgle, Epidemius for support, and Horticulus Slimex. My Warlord is the Great Unclean One with a sword, and he has the enhancement Endless Gift. And that is my 2,000 point army.
This is my Sisters of Battle army. It's designed to be a pretty balanced list with a mix of long-range and direct fire, anti-tank, and some brawlers in the form of mortifiers, as well as secondary play with these Crusaders, Arcoflagellants, Seraphim, and then of course the Calatus Assassin, which should give me some good tech pieces. I'm led by the Triumph from St. Catherine. I have an emulator to split up a Battle Sister squad, which I have 2 of. All of them are multi-Melta and Meltas. I have a Palatine with a Blade of St. Eleanor, 2 Dialogus, or Retributor squad, 2 squads of 2 Mortifiers, 1 squad of 1 Mortifier, 2 Castigators, 2 Exorcists. Yeah.
Alright, and that is the army. So for the mission today, we have Dawn of War deployment, Chilling Rain, so nothing particularly cool, and Scorched Earth, which is in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th battle round. We can destroy objectives with a unit just performing an action and gain points for it. Pretty fairly simple, and that is the mission. So for secondaries, for Nurgle, I can barely do anything because I have so few units because my army's weak. So I chose Fixed, Assassination, and Bring It Down. His walkers, which he has a lot of, count as vehicles, and he has a lot of vehicles. And he has a lot of characters. So I'm like, alright, that works. And my opponent, what did you choose?
I have tactical objectives. Sisters are on the weaker end of the spectrum right now, but I do have a lot of play with really cheap Crusader units, 20 points each, the 45-point Arcoflagellants. I can take the Calatus Assassin, which I can pick up and redeploy as a deep strike every turn, plus deep striking Seraphim, so I have a lot of tactical play. And oftentimes I can't take the center objective anyway, so I'll be in the enemy's deployment zone and table core like that. With Scorched Earth, that's actually pretty good because earning his home objective or forcing him to stay in his deployment zone, so we'll see.
We'll see. So for deployment, I lost the roll-off, so I was defender, made to deploy first. And so because I have some movement shenanigans planned, I just placed my Warlord, which is the Great Unclean One, first. And then I just built my guys around it. I know my opponent has a lot of deep strike reserves going to come in and stuff, so my main thing was to just spread out, take as much cover as possible because he has a lot of range and stuff. Offer up some things that are tastier to shoot at than others, and we'll see what happens. Nurglings are in the front to be annoying, but that's pretty much it. I'm just winging it, and yeah, that was the entirety of my plan. So what about you?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what my overall strat is. We'll see who goes first. However, I have some plays on all sides of the board. I can make a play to punish you if you try to take the center. I know you can do sticky objectives and move that Shadow of Chaos around the board using some stratagems. So yeah, overall I typically try to play for 2 primaries while taking down your major buff units and playing for tacticals, but we'll see. Your deployment zone is littered with stuff now, but we'll see where you move them and that.
Yeah. Alright then. And yeah. Who goes first, who goes second? So I'll start off with this. If I go first, I do not want to go first. I actually want to go second because of movement shenanigans and tricks like that. So I think that's essentially what I want to do. If I go first, I only need 2 objectives. That's the thing. I only need to control 2 objectives. To gain points, so I don't really need to control the board, only for Shadow of Chaos purposes, but since we can destroy objectives, It'll be mostly consolidating my forces, trying to nullify most your shooting and stuff like that. So we'll see how that goes. If I go second, I'll be able to react and just slaughter what I see or move around you. That's essentially what I want to do. I want to go second for the fun and for the movement. But first turn, I just need to take one objective and just prep for counterattack. That's it. What about you?
Yeah, if I go first, it would be unfortunate. Obviously, I would have to make a move to secure at least one other primary and space out my units. I know you have 3-inch deep strike stratagems.
Yep.
I know Shadow of Chaos is...
Yep.
It could come into play. I know you can burn one objective, and then you'd only have to capture one other No Man's Land primary to make the whole No Man's Land Shadow of Chaos. That would be really good for you.
Well, actually, I only need to control half or more, so if I wipe out all the objectives but one, yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, if you burn two. But, yeah, I prefer to go second, obviously, because you're mostly post-combat, so the onus would be on you to try to move up the board, and I could be reactive to that, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right, so let's roll and see if we get our wishes. Where's your dice? It's over there. Grab your dice. Okay, whatever. And 2.
Darn it.
All right, you got what you wanted. What I wanted. Yeah. So, Battle Sisters, turn 1.
Okay, for my tactical secondaries, I got a tempting target. He selected the center objective as the tempting target, and I got cleanse. In my command phase, nothing of note other than I did get a 6 for one of my miracle dice and a 4, which I used to advance. My emulator, I moved up the board. I would have moved it a little further, but I couldn't move within engagement range of those annoying Nurglings. I disembarked my 5-person sister squad there. I advanced up my Crusaders. And then from there, I'm just moving into position up the board, moving up my tanks. Because he did select the tempting target as a center point, I did decide to advance this sister squad with the Palatine and the Dialogus. My Mortifiers I moved up, Castigator, Calidus Assassin I also ended up advancing. And this Mortifier as well, because they're not going to be in range of anything particularly juicy this turn, although I probably could attack those Nurglings.
And?
Oh, and I moved up my Retributors to this part of the ruins.
And one thing of note is the Battle Sisters Red in the middle used one of his miracle dice to auto-advance. Yes. And that was his movement phase.
Okay, so my emulator shot its flamers at the Nurglings and was actually able to kill them with that and the heavy bolter. That was great. The Castigator sadly cleansed. Again, I'm very sad about that. So they didn't shoot anything. So the only other shooting I actually had were these 2 Exorcists, which shot at the Beasts of Nurgle. The first one was able to get one of the Exorcist missiles to wound the Beast, and I used my 6 miracle die to do 6 wounds, and then the heavy bolter finished it off. The second Exorcist whiffed completely and will be destroyed after the game.
One of the upsides of TTS.
I'm going to throw it off the table.
And that was the shooting phase.
I was able to max out both tacticals, which is pretty good for me. Sadly, for the cleanse, I had to max it out by foregoing all shooting on my Castigators. Nothing else could get in range. I probably could have deployed better such that I had models that didn't need to advance to get on those points. For attempting target, he chose the center, which was doable for me. However, I did have to put a pretty important squad in the center of the map. I don't think I'm going to be chargeable, but we'll see if that comes back to bite me or not. But yeah, 10 points the first turn, pretty good.
Review. Now, one of the great unclean ones is missing. It's because I forgot to do it at the end of my opponent's turn, but like no time passed. So essentially, at the end of my opponent's turn, I activate ability called Realm of Chaos, which at the end of my opponent's turn, I get to take up to 2 guys in Shadow of the Warp or 1 guy in non-Shadow of the Warp. And essentially, what happens is I get to just remove them from the battlefield and put them in Deep Strike. They would Deep Strike next turn, but it's fine. So I took 1 Great and Clean one and the surviving Beast of Nurgle out, so they can go elsewhere. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. So apart from that, I then had my Rodigus run forward. He got a 5, so he moved 12 inches up. I had my Nurgling Swarm touch the objective and such. My plague drones moved up on the left to touch the objective. My plague bearers, my blue squad, ran but could not reach the objective, so they moved into a place where they can't be seen or shot. Epidemius and his orange squad moved to be to not be able to be shot from certain angles and stuff. And then my plague drones moved into position where they'll also have some more shielding from shooting. And that was my movement phase and command phase. For the shooting phase, first my teal plague drones fired into his red battle sister squad. Apparently they had blast attacks, so I went back to that afterwards. But basically, they got 6 attacks and 6 extra attacks, which I roll separately afterwards. But essentially, they were able to kill 2 of them. But since they did at least have 1 hit, I have rerolled to wounds on them, which I totally forgot about when I shot him with Rodigus afterwards. Stock on it. And then my orange plague drones fired at the Calidus assassin. Hit her, but did absolutely nothing. So she has the debuff on her. And then Rodigus fired his stream of brackish filth on the Battle Sisters and killed a few. Killed 3 of them. And that was the shooting phase. However, after I stopped recording, my opponent said, "Hey, I'll spend 1 CP to get free shooting at you because you killed some models." And then he fired 3 Meltas, some heavy bolters, and stuff like that, and did absolutely nothing. And that was the shooting phase. For charges, Rodigus, I spent 1 CP for Warp Surge, giving the ability to advance and charge. And yeah. And so then he almost failed. He rolled a 1 and then rolled a 4, so I was able to make it in and got in. Then the plague drones on the left charged the Calidus assassin and the mortifier, and they failed it with rolled a double 1. Yeah, and that was the charge phase. Rodigus, I chose sweep attack because they're really weak, and I thought the 3-up save, Space Marine stuff, so I gave them increased damage, which was pointless, but I did it anyway because they also have Feel No Pains. So 14 attacks, 4 missed, all wounded, and I barely killed anything. He kept rolling really good saves, and he in fact rolled 2 6s for 1 Feel No Pain. So this was a disappointing fight. I didn't kill anything, but however, I still take the objective because I have 5 OC, he has 4, and I have his movement and OC within 6 inches. And then he swung back and did 2 wounds to me because of some weird shenanigans where he discarded a miracle dice and stuff like that, and that was the fight phase. So for points, those 2 characters I think are still alive in that unit because of terrible whiffing rolls, actually my opponent rolled really well, so that was a mistake despite all the buffs. It's ridiculous. So I gained no secondaries, and we'll see what happens in primary. So moving on.
For my secondaries, I got Overwhelming Force, so if I destroy any of his units that are touching an objective, I'll get 3 victory points each. Pretty good, to a max of 5. Secure No Man's Land, if I hold 2 No Man's Land objectives at the end of the turn, I max that out, and luckily I was in a great position to do that. For movement, this Emulator, Battle Sister Squad, and Crusaders, I moved forward up into the middle of the battlefield. The Castigator, I moved forward into these ruins right here so that they could peek through and see Rodigus if necessary. Triumph, I moved forward. These 2 Mortifiers, I moved towards Rodigus. Exorcists, I have staying still so that they can get the +1 to hit from the heavy. These 2 Crusader squads, I had moved in from reserves to try to screen from any deep strikes behind my Exorcists. And then I brought in a whole bunch of reserves again. The Seraphim, deep striked 9 inches away. They found a good place right here. I'm going to try to get that tactical secondary by killing those plague drones, and that's why the mortifiers also came in. Typically I like to save them for turn 3 in the opponent's deployment zone, but maxing out that tactical this turn is going to be good.
And that's it.
Okay, so one of my castigators shot and killed the Nurgling swarm that was there for that tactical secondary. I had the Triumph shoot into it as well, kind of whiffed.
He also, the castigator, yeah.
On the other side, those plague drones, I shot quite a lot into. The 3 mortifiers, the Calidus, the castigator, and it took 2 full salvos of the Exorcist missile launchers indirect to get those off of there.
To point it out, the 3 mortifiers here fired at them and didn't do a single wound, so their shooting was wasted.
Very pathetic, very pathetic. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that essentially does it. I mean, not much else. I mean, I got rid of those Nurglings and then those places. That's pretty good for me for tacticals.
Yeah. Alright then, and that's the end of the shooting phase.
Okay, first I charged these 2 mortifiers into Rodriguez. He overwatched me, got 1 wound on, and I also charged the Triumph into Rodriguez, and then the Castigator into these Plague Drones. Hopefully I can lock them up.
Yeah, that Overwatch was not worth it. Alright, and that was the charge phase.
He completely whiffed, but he did take 1 wound in return. Not the end of the world, since he is below his... Since he took a wound, he does actually get +1 to hit, and he can shoot out of combat, so that might be pretty good for me, because I'm also tying up those Plague Drones. For Rodriguez's combat, he's down to 7 wounds, which is pretty good. My Palatine squad, I think, got 1 in, got a couple wounds in. The Mortifiers, though, that charged in, they got quite a few wounds in there, so that was good.
Yeah, and so Rodriguez, so at the beginning of the fight phase, he cast his ability where the enemy unit takes 1 more damage from all Nurgle, so he was doing 4 damage against the Mortifiers. So when I swung, it was a very close thing. I did exactly enough damage to kill him, which means that the Overwatch I did earlier actually was useful, because if I didn't, one of them would still be alive. So, because he has these 5 of Feel No Pains, and he kept rolling a bunch of them. It's ridiculous. And yeah. And then your guys swung the Battle Sisters.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I think the Palatine did do a couple damage, but they have not done anything really.
Yeah, the Palatine barely did anything. Your Triumph of St. Catherine did like 2 damage to me. Yeah, 2 damage.
Oh,
and then my Plague Drones, did 1 damage against your tank. And that was the fight phase.
Well, once again, I got super lucky on tacticals, overwhelming force. I was able to get rid of some Nurglings on the center objective. And those Plague Drones on that right objective, so I was able to make 5 victory points, then secure No Man's Land. I was lucky enough to start the turn with 2 of them secured, so I maxed that out without having to do too much.
Mm-hmm. And then I got 4 because Bring It Down, I killed 2 Mortifiers, so that's 2 victory points per guy, and that's the turn. My turn. So Rodriguez had to take a, Battle Shock test. He passed it on a 6. Then I moved up. My orange squad of Plague Bears moved up to deal with the Sephirim. The blue Plague Bears had to run. They rolled a 1. They got on the objective. They have 4 bodies, so that turns to 8 OC, so I take it. So the midsection is now Shadow of the Warp. My Warlord landed on the bottom right to deal with tanks. My green Great Unclean One showed up on the left. Then 1 Beast of Nurgle showed up on his back right. And then my Horticulus Slimex and his beasts landed in the bottom left to support there, and we'll see what happens. Alright, so for the shooting phase, first I started with Rodriguez, who fired his stream of brackish filth into the squad in front of him, wiped them out, and killed his Dialogus character, so that's 1 character dead. Then I had the Great Unclean One General, which was on my right, fire at his 2 Crusaders, and killed them all. Only 4 wounds went through, but he failed too. And that was enough. And then I had my Great Unclean One on the left, the green one, fire his stream, or his putrid vomit on the Calidus Assassin, wiped her out. So that's another character gone. And that was my shooting phase. So for the charge phase, I started with my Warlord Great Unclean One, charged his Immolator, made it on a 6-inch charge. Then the Beast of Nurgle up above, charging his Battle Sisters on the right objective, and he made it on a 10. Then I had my green Great Unclean One charge his 1 Mortifier there, and he made it in. Then I had my Horticulus Slimex and his Beast of Nurgle squad, who have a free reroll to charge, failed their charges. I rolled a 4, and then I rolled a 4. And then Epidemius and his squad, I rolled it 1 at a time, rolled a 1, and then rolled a 4, which was enough to get in. So, win some, lose some. Alright, so for the fight phase. First, I started off, I can't remember where I started. Oh yeah, the Plague Bears with Epidemius, they swung. I just had the Plague Bears swing, and they wiped out the squad before Epidemius could swing. Well, that was that. Then I had my Great Unclean One swing against his Immolator. I did absolutely nothing against it. Then Beast of Nurgle swung on the Battle Sisters, killed 3 of them. That's something. Then on the left, my green Great Unclean One swung on the Mortifier, did only 4 wounds to it. That was terrible. And then he swung with the Triumph of St. Catherine on Rodriguez, did a bunch of wounds, brought him down to 3, and then Rodriguez swung on them, and then my opponent spent a ton of miracle dice saving him. He had 6 wounds at -3, 4 damage each, because of the debuff that the Rodriguez can give to a specific unit. And he used Miracle Dice to auto-pass a bunch of them, and then he took 8 wounds, and so his counter is counting how many they have left. And then, whatchamacallit? And then after that, his Palatine swung on Rodriguez, and 2 wounds went through and finished him off. And he didn't explode. Yes. And then he swung back with his Castigator, did nothing. I swung with my Plague Drones, did 2 wounds. He swung with his Mortifier on my Great Unclean One, and did absolutely nothing, despite having reroll to wound. And that was the fight phase. So for points, I got my 10 for primer because I only have to hold 1, hold 2, and I held it at the beginning of the turn. Secondary, I killed 2 characters, and they were worth 4 points each on assassination. And I whiffed really hard on the vehicle rolls. There should be a bunch more deaths on here, but no. So sadly, I did not get any more bring it downs, but gained some points. My opponent's been lucky with his draws, but we'll see how that continues. And that was the my second turn.
Okay, well, for tacticals, well, first I took 10 primary points. For tacticals, I got Storm Hostile Objective, so I'm actually going to take it because he charged out here, even though he had the sticky objective. Since he technically controls it, I'll be controlling it at the end of the turn, so I'll be able to get that with those extra reserves. And then engage on all fronts. I'm getting it at different table quarters. I can definitely be on, what is this, 2 table quarters? So I have that, and then for movement, I moved the Immolator out of combat so that I wouldn't get the -1 to shoot at the Great Unclean One, and I moved my Retributors advanced them this way so I could get a little bit closer in case he's still there next turn. I'm advancing the Crusaders to the corners for some extra tacticals I might draw next turn. Mortifier, same thing, moving towards the corner. Castigator retreating into the center. And that's it. Okay, so everything whiffed pretty much. I got to put 3 wounds into the Great Unclean One from my Exorcist, where I used a 6 for the Miracle Die, and then he saved half of the Feel No Pains. Everything else didn't hit anything. A lot of combat shooting, so that doesn't help, but such is life.
Yeah, and that was the shooting phase.
My only charges are the Palatine and the Triumph from St. Catherine, charging from the center point into these Plague Drones. I charged the Triumph and the Palatine into those Plague Drones. The Triumph with Holy Rage was able to do a lot of wounds, killed 2 of the Plague Drones outright, and then the Palatine with her extra mortal wounds and her 3 damage from the Blade of St. Eleanor was able to clean up the other one. Over here, the Beast of Nurgle killed 2 of my sisters. Pretty unlucky on your part, and I whiffed as well, so I have 1 left though. I was able to get Storm Hostile Objective for 5 secondary points. I misplayed and missed out on Engage All Fronts, but I did max out my primaries as well, so overall an okay turn.
So at the end of my opponent's last turn, I spent a CP to bring back Horticular Slimex into Deep Strike, as well as my Plague Bearer squad. And then I moved up. I ran my Great Unclean One towards the middle. The red one moved up to take the objective on the right, putting the whole place in the Shadow of Chaos. And then I placed Horticular Slimex 6 inches away from the Triumph of St. Catherine, and I spent 1 CP for Epidemius to be on the objective. I gained 1 CP because I killed more than 7 models in the last turn, and it's my command phase again. And yeah, and that was the movement phase. So at the end of the shooting phase, so at the end of the movement phase, the Great Unclean Ones reduced the toughness of the Immolator and the Castigator by 1, as is their ability. In the shooting phase, the Great Unclean One, the Plague Flail and the Putrid Vomit did nothing against the Immolator, and then I was going to shoot the the Castigator with my green Great Unclean One, but I forgot he ran, so he can't shoot. For charges, green Great Unclean One, I spent 1 CP to allow them to advance and charge. They charged, they made it in. Then Horticulus Slimex and his squad charged at Triumph of St. Catherine, failed. Horticulus gives them a free reroll to charge. I rolled it 1 at a time and barely made it in. Then I had my red, green, and clean one charge as Immolator, and it got in. And that was the charge phase. So for the fight phase, first up was... Who did I swing first with? Alright, the Horticulus Slimex swung on the Triumph of St. Catherine, did a total of 4 damage to them. Then my Beast of Nurgle went and whiffed really hard and only brought her down to her last 2 wounds. Could have killed her, they just needed to do 6. Did not work. Then the Great Unclean One on the right swung on his Immolator. 1 attack went through, it's because they're high toughness. and I rolled a 6 on damage, so brought it down to 5 wounds. Then my Great Unclean One on the left, the green one, swung on the Castigator and did 4 wounds total. And then they swung back, so my Beast of Nurgle swung on his green Sister Superior, and he used a Miracle Die to make with a save from the one attack that made it through, saving it. Immolator did nothing to my guy, his Castigator did nothing to my Great Unclean One, and Triumph of St. Catherine did only 2 damage to my squad of Beasts of Nurgles, and they regenerated it immediately. And that was the fight phase. So, I only gained 5 points for primary. Every time I leave my back objective with Nurgle, it always gets taken the next turn somehow. Assassination, I got close to it, didn't make it. Bring it down, I got somewhat close, didn't make it. Yeah. So I just need to kill a lot more guys quickly.
Most of my movement is running away from objectives I know I can't keep, and pulling back out of combat so I can shoot in. Over here, I moved my Immolator away from the Great Unclean One and the Sister Superior. Hopefully she can get some good screening to prevent movement in this direction. We'll see. Castigator, same thing. He's moving here to screen. Flagellants, they're advancing this way to see if they can do anything and also be in this table quarter. Crusaders also moving towards table quarters just in case I get that good secondary. Mortifiers are going to move towards these Plague Bearers to see if they can take them out. This Castigator is staying in this combat. We'll see if we can lock up stuff here. The Palatine also hopefully is moving in here. Yeah, we'll see what happens if I can stall them in combat using some stratagems. Well, this turn was my Great Gambit to kill the Great Unclean One. Did not work out. Retributors did 3 damage, I think.
Yes.
The Exorcists and the Castigators completely whiffed. And other than that, I will say this Castigator over here did, in addition to these Mortifiers, kill this Plague Bearer squad. So that was very good.
And that was the shooting phase.
Only 1 combat, Great Unclean One and the Castigator. He did 2 wounds, I did nothing.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I was able to get no points and bring it down, but I did get my minimum engage on all fronts because I was in 3 table quarters, so I got 3 victory points for that.
Alright, so for movement phase, Horticulous Slimex and his squad moved up. Great Unclean One moved down to chase the Immolator. Beast of Nurgle moved forward to go towards the Retributors. Orange Plague Bearer squad moved towards Flagellants, and that's it. So for the shooting phase, my Great Unclean One in combat shot out of combat at the Triumph of St. Catherine. 4 wounds went through. My opponent spent 3 miracle dice to autosave and then took 1 wound. Then my Great Unclean One red on the side shot at the 1 green Sister Superior he had on his objective there, and I ended up killing him. And that was the shooting phase. For the charge phase, Slimex and his squad charged the Triumph and the Palatine. And the Beast of Nurgle charged his Meltas, and then my Great Unclean One charged the red Immolator, and that was it. For the fight phase, first up, Beasts of Nurgle and Horticulous Slimex. 2 Beasts of Nurgle wailed on the Triumph of St. Catherine and just barely killed her. Then Horticulous Slimex swung everything on the Palatine and killed her. And then he spent CP to have the Palatine fight on death and killed one of my Beasts of Nurgle back. And yeah, and then after that, my Great Unclean One red wiped out that Immolator. My Orange Plague Bear squad, Epidemius himself with 9 attacks, killed the Arcoflagellants. My Beast of Nurgle up top killed 2 of his Retributors with the Meltas. And then my Great Unclean One brought the Castigator down all the way to 1 wound. He kept using Miracle Dice to spare it. And then he spent points to allow CP to bring, or not, Miracle Dice to bring back the Triumph of St. Catherine with 1 wound and the Palatine with 1 wound. But I still get points for killing them. So for points, I gained 10 in total for primary, 2 for killing 2 guys, and 3 for killing that vehicle, because I had over 10 wounds, bringing me to 58. And that is the points. We decided to call it there. We did Theory Hammer and realized that at the very best guaranteed, Nurgle would end up losing by 6 points at the very least of what was easily feasibly done. And his next tacticals wouldn't allow for anything else. So, victory to the Sisters, very close game. And now MVP, LVP. So for LVP, I have a close tie. The Great Unclean Ones in general and Horticulous Slimex. He failed his first double charge, which I really needed to do damage, and if he would have made it in and done damage, I would have gotten a bunch of other points for killing a vehicle. I would have changed the battlefield a bit. My Plague Bearers on the left side would still exist because they would have killed that tank, so they failed hard. The Great Unclean Ones showed up and just slap fought everything. It took 4 rounds of combat to bring that Castigator down to 1 wound because this freaking Great Unclean One, or 4 rounds I believe, and then the other Great Unclean One riffed so hard against that Immolator. Should have died on its first charge, but nope, it survived. It's just terrible. So overall, the LVP would be the Great Unclean Ones. No, actually, yeah, because the Horticulous Slimex did get me a ton of points killing characters, so lowest scoring unit, the Great Unclean Ones. My MVP, Rodriguez, got me early points in the center, killed off a squad, got a bunch of points killing off the some of his whatever those walkers were, killed them, did a ton of wounds to the Triumph of St. Catherine. Even though he was completely surrounded and he didn't have his Feel No Pain buffs from a nearby other Great Unclean One, he actually did incredibly well. Did a lot of movement shenanigans, got me a lot of damage done, killed a lot of units. So for me, unfortunately, everything sucked, but this was my MVP. Not a high bar, though. So what about you?
The Triumph, definitely the MVP. This game, not only did she herself kill a lot in combat, but the unlimited Miracle Dice, the Axe of Faith, obviously is incredible. Using it for saves. A lot of saves I used it on this game. Very few times did I use it on damage. I did actually get a lot of lucky Miracle Dice rolls, so I was able to just kind of keep popping off multiple Miracle Dice per turn in multiple different units. But yeah, she killed a lot in combat. She tied up the center. The other great thing about her is she allows you to kind of shift your play style on a dime if you need to get her into combat, since with that Holy Rage, 18 power sword attacks, plus 1 wound, even against really tough units. Yeah, she's really strong. So she was great. Absolutely the core of any Sisters list. The least valuable squad was definitely the Retributors. They're the kind of squad you lie in waiting for the perfect turn when you can really line them up and spam 8 to 10 Miracle Dice to destroy them, or destroy whatever you're shooting at. In this case, I ended up using so many Miracle Dice that when I did end up shooting with them, I only had 3 or 4. So that was one factor. But they just essentially just whiffed. They got 1 good shooting phase, which they whiffed, despite being, a 200-point investment with the Dialogus. And also, typically, they're kind of the sort of unit, if they're not going to kill stuff, you want your opponent to at least try to play around them so that they're not exposed to the risk of being blasted by the Retributors. But I don't think in this game they were in a position to really adjust to the decisions you made. So essentially, they were a non-factor in the game. So.
Yeah, and the fact is they targeted my toughest Great Unclean One with a 4-up Feel No Pain and a 4-up Invuln save, so whatever damage you did was reduced heavily.
Yeah, I think they only did like 3 or 4 damage.
They did 3. With 5 multi-meltas or whatever it was, 4. Yeah. And so that is our MVPs. So as far as the game goes, as far as Nurgle is... It's a fun thing, but it is a bit frustrating. I have so few units, but the ones who really do the damage are the Great Unclean Ones. I'm really thinking I'm just playing my, my Nurglings wrong. I should have kept them in the back and used them as screeners. That would have actually probably won me the game, because keeping my backline clear, keeping my enemy from being able to push in too deep. Instead, they mostly were useless because my guys were just so tough that a -1 to hit really wouldn't matter. And apart from that, they showed up. A lot of good movement shenanigans. I kept teleporting across the board, going to where I really needed to, but a few bad dice rolls really hurt me in the end. So you have to play very smart, but you have to recognize the limits of your army and where to put your assets at the best, essentially. So, yeah, so that's what I am thinking. So, what do you think about your army, Sisters?
Well, again, I was running a pretty balanced list that has a lot of tactical play, but also it can fight for the primary objective. The 2 Exorcists, are doing consistent medium-high damage from relative safety. So if you were to choose to park in the center, in theory, they can, hammer you down, while I have a lot of combat shenanigans with characters that I can res to lock you in combat. And then I also have the Suffering and Sacrifice, which I didn't end up using, but I can make it so that you only attack 1 unit in that combat. And specifically against your army, that's really strong, because if I'm in base-to-base contact with a Great Unclean One, I can make it so all of his swings go to like a 20-point Crusader squad. But in this game too, like it was all about movement. And then in turn two, when I kind of realized what I really needed to do was minimize the number of units you had, like you had mentioned, that was one of the big weaknesses of this sort of play style. Because I kind of just said I'm not going to kill the great unclean ones. I mean, I'm going to try for the tactical secondaries, but much better to see if I can reduce his movement, so that I can get the table quarters and then some good tacticals. I got really lucky with the tacticals, but yeah, I mean, early game I did feel like I almost got lucky. Normally I wouldn't have advanced to the center with that squad. I would have held back, but to get that 3-5 victory points, it was definitely a good trade. Normally, actually, I was testing that squad out where the Dialogist and the Palatine in the squad. The Palatine gives everyone lethal hits, and with the multi-melta and melta and the Dialogist, basically, if I use any miracle die, it turns to a 6, and because they have lethal hits, I can overwatch you. With my meltas and multi-meltas with lethal hits, I just use 3 miracle dice, turn it to 3 6s, and then bam, you take 3 extra melta shots. Or just in my regular shooting phase, I did the same thing. So pretty much every time they shoot, or if you shoot them and I shoot back, same thing. I can just pump miracle dice. So in a perfect world, you move into range, I overwatch you, 3 melta shots on 6s. You shoot me, you kill 1 or 2 guys, but you don't finish off the squad. I return fire using another stratagem, shooting back again. And then in combat, the Palatine, as you saw, does a lot of damage. So it's really versatile. I used to run more of involved with the Paragons, but this is significantly cheaper, and so I was basically able to trade them, who are a lot more fragile, for this bigger Battle Sister squad with the Dialogist and the Palatine, as well as some additional Mortifiers and Arcoflagellants for additional tactical play. It's always really good for this kind of list. I really like threatening your home objective on turn 3. Normally I would have saved the 2 Mortifiers to do that, but because of the tacticals I drew in the second turn, where if I destroyed those plague drones I would be able to get victory points, I decided, I'm going to go all in on trying to secure that side of the board. So I did get really lucky with tacticals. It definitely adjusted my game plan every turn compared to what I had been planning to do. My initial game plan was really just to take the objective with the emulator, to give up the center and to just kill as many of your smaller units as I could. That way you would have to make tough choices about positioning and where you wanted to park your great unclean ones. You do have sticky stratagems.
Yeah.
So that was one thing, but then my thought was too, though, if you're gonna use your CP to do stuff like that, then I would have a leg up in combat with my Palatine, with my Triumph. And then again, I can always just keep moving back and shooting you. So I had, I guess, a few options available to me, but everything kind of changed each turn because I kept getting lucky on tacticals.
Yeah, it's like you got the exact right ones you needed.
Yeah.
All right, well, overall, as far as the game goes, nothing else to say. I played to the best of my ability, although learning now, I probably would have kept my Nurglings back. Like, there's no real big upsets or U-turns in the game. Everything kind of went how you would expect, sort of. Yeah. Yeah, alright. Well, GG's. We don't know what we're going to be playing next week, but, well, we'll see what happens. Bye.